Okay, hello, folks. Green energy. That'll be today's subject. For those of you who come here from my Facebook feed, sorry about the slight delay. Oh, I had to figure out why it wasn't allowing the chat to load. Turns out it's something totally weird on YouTube's end. I thought it was my side. Uh, anyways, uh, just getting ready for the day to start this, and I was basically trying to think of what would the subject be for today, and I came across a thought. Solar energy in general is really, really effective. If you compare it to, for instance, wind energy and such, uh, so when you're comparing the different green energy types, you have solar, you have wind. Uh, I believe we found a way to do like a thermal, but anyways, the main ones that people know about are wind and solar, and the wind one really isn't all that effective. People seem to think you set up a turbine, you let the wind push it, and it generates electricity. That's actually far less effective than how they make it sound, which is why I say solar panels are far more effective. Uh, because when they set up a wind turbine, they don't actually produce all that much power. They still need to use diesel within them to keep their cranks and all the shafting and everything that's inside of it moving smoothly. Most of that has to go to a generator on the inside that then can be powered up. That still has to be diverted, etc. That there's many, many, many things that go into that. Whereas with a solar panel, you're quite literally taking a unit that absorbs rays from the sun. Now, don't get this confused. Some people seem to think, for whatever reason, I don't know how people get this part confused, but when we're absorbing the sunlight, we're not stealing the sun's energy. That's stuff that's already hitting the earth. So I don't understand how people think we're depleting the sun's life source by using solar energy. But for any intelligent person out there, you'll realize the sun light itself that would have naturally hit the earth anyways, that right there, it's not like it hits the earth and goes back to the sun and replenishes at some point. No, it hits here, it either warms up the earth, does nothing, etc. So all we're doing is placing a solar panel in front of that. It hits that, warms it up as a byproduct of what light can do, and then also, uh, in turn, because of how a solar panel produces its power, it basically transitions that light directly into an energy source. Well, when you look at it, there's no oil involved in a solar panel, except for the actual manufacturing of it, because we're oiling the machines and stuff that we use. So I mean, we're always going to have some sort of an oil in general. Now, it may not always be fossil fuel oil. We can make oil from hemp plants. We can make oil from. I'm trying to think. There's something in the Amazon that we can basically secrete stuff from, and it's an oil-based substance. But we're always going to need something for oiling machines. Oh, sorry about that. Apparently, I'm a lot more tired than I thought. Uh, but I find it interesting because many people are either completely for or completely against energy in general when it comes to green energy. And I find a lot of people argue that it's not actually true green energy because you're taking, for instance, like a Tesla. You have the Tesla plug-in station in your house. You take that, you plug it into your car, and you'll walk away. And some people are like, "No, that's just energy that it's right there. It's coming right out of my wall, and I'm powering up my car with it. It's energy that wouldn't have been used otherwise." No, no, that's not how that works. And then you have people on the opposite spectrum though that take that to a whole different level, but also a real level where they say the energy that's coming from your wall, not going in and charging your green car, as they put it, is actually coming from a power station. Now, wherever your power station is, that coal isn't exactly the most efficient product. We have a combination in case it's still live, it's telling me up here for some reason that the connection isn't stable. Okay, anyways, that little memo went away, so hopefully everything's fine. I don't know why that did that, but uh, basically out here we have a combination of a coal slash hydro plant where we burn a whole crap ton of coal to heat up a base plate, essentially. That base plate has water in a tank above it that flows in from one side, comes in, and then rests in this big system. Well, what we're doing is we're heating that base plate so hot that it will boil the water. That water, I'm going to move it down now. So that water boils, turns to steam, goes up. Now there's a turbine up above here that it hits and it rotates. When that turns, it turns a crankshaft that is going to another room, that yada, yada, yada. It goes on and on. Whole big, huge factory. But that's essentially how my area produces its power. Okay, so one, we need a whole bunch of water that we're going to boil off. We need a bunch of coal. But the coal is the main thing that I'm trying to get to, is we had to mine a resource in general to even start the process of making that power that then would go and eventually transition through your lines to your house to power that car. Now, the green car, the only true green aspect of those cars is the fact that while they are driving, they're not physically putting off an emission. So other vehicles, you're burning. Whew. Why I'm yawning so much, I do not know. Well, scientifically speaking, it's because I'm not getting enough oxygen into my body, probably because I'm talking. So I just gotta be like, but anyways, enough with that science lesson. But yeah, basically, green cars are pretty much only green because they don't put off any sort of byproduct. So when you're in a normal car, turn your key, alternator, all that kicks on, your engine starts up, and essentially you're starting to burn that fuel. Well, that fuel then puts off vapors out of the back, along with a little bit of water residue. I'm not 100% on that one, but it puts off some sort of water, typically, I believe, because of the heat that's producing, and it's causing those pipes to basically condensate within them. I assume that's why it is. There might be another reason, but not 100% on that. That might be the next show. I don't know. I might look into that. But, but point being is that's the only true green aspect of the car. The actual powering up of the car, it can't be fully green unless we had nothing but solar panels. Something that physically doesn't require oil and all that to actually allow it to operate, to power it. So say every house had solar panels on top of it, and then that goes down to your charge station, which then charges your car. Congratulations, now you're fully green. These people that just buy a Tesla and are like, oh, I'm 100% green. No, you're not. Like, just because you don't personally burn the coal or anything doesn't make it to where you're 100% green. That's you're assisting in being 100% green by not putting off carbon dioxides and whatever, all that comes out of tailpipe. Other, oh man, yawning is contagious. I'm making myself yawn. I don't know. That's what I'll say. Other green stuff that we could easily talk about is some cities have begun trying to utilize in between traffic. So you got one traffic that heads this way, one traffic that comes like this. So you're passing. You got that center median. Some people are putting turbines in the center of those that have like a twisted spiral down the center of it. When cars pass by it, naturally a car has what's called drag. That's where your hair in that current goes around the car, and basically that produces some wind that actually releases off the sides. Well, that wind then hits those turbines and it turns it. So they're using that to actually help power up some of the lights and everything within those cities on those city streets. Uh, that's actually a unique design, something I never thought I'd see, and something that was quite interesting when I read about it because I'm not sure where those go. Like, what sort of mechanics are they utilizing under it? How simplistic are they, etc. There's many different things that deal with that. Looks like somebody just joined, so thank you for joining the stream. Uh, but yeah, and a lot of people say like, oh, all we have to do is put the solar panels, for instance, in parking lots. So where you would normally park, you put solar panels up above those areas, connect them via the light poles. You could have lights running underneath them, above them. They're collecting all the energy. It does two things: it keeps your car away from the elements, and it also helps power any vehicles that were green down below because you could plug them directly in. But you also run into other issues with that where, say, does the city pay for that? Does the business pay for that? And then if the business pays for it, is it tax creditable, etc.? So it's not as simple as just, hey, let's build them here and let's do this. Now you have to figure out mathematically what can you credit them if they're purchasing it. Uh, but it is a good idea because it would allow physically unused space to become usable space that we're actually utilizing for something. Well, let's see who's. Yeah, it's still not showing on my participant list who's actually here, but I see it says that I have somebody watching. But uh, right now I'm talking about green energy. I was discussing about solar panels versus wind turbines, and also touched a little bit on green cars, as they put it, and why they're not technically green. Like, they're pretty much only green because you end up with uh, the no byproduct coming out of like a tailpipe, for instance. Uh, if you say hi in chat, I can definitely give you a shout out, like personal name wise and everything. Uh, but wind turbines, that is the one thing that I've only seen effective made next to where cars drive. It's actually kind of ironic because when they make the giant ones, you have to have enough space for them to turn and rotate and go everywhere along with spin. So you take up all that space, it literally still uses mechanical drives on the inside and everything. So it has to have oils and everything, which is why you've seen things where like they burst into flames and stuff like that. They're not fossil fuelless. They're not perfected in any way to get full green on that. Uh, the interesting part is the fact that for how large they are and for how much space we have to give them to fully operate within their full 360 radius, they produce very minimal electricity compared to just a solar panel because you could have so much more use out of a solar panel. And people are getting unique and starting to design solar panels that no longer are just like a flat panel. Sometimes instead of a flat panel, they're having like a cone shaped panel. And what that allows it to do is as the sun transitions from one side to another without even moving this panel, without having to rely on a gadget to tilt it or anything or even track the sun, that panel automatically takes in the most amount of sunlight from all angles. Uh, so there is some design improvements. Other than that, oh, sorry, someone was messaging me off site. I had to link them to this and be like, hey, sorry. But basically, the interesting part, though, with green technology, it is advancing. There's people coming up with all sorts of various different ways, uh, but people are coming up with ways, for instance, to put underwater turbines, which don't have to rely so much on the mechanical because there's a lot bigger of a current in the ocean than there is just in our air. And since there's more resistance within the ocean, there's actually more stuff to push against those turbines. That comes into a whole different issue, though, because then you start talking about, I believe it's called aquamarina life, is the technical term, if I remember it, where seaweed might get entangled in, so you do have to watch the area that you place those, along with continually monitoring it because algae and all sorts of sea growth that could get onto it. But there's many different things that could essentially in the long run turn into green energy. I just personally think that solar energy will be what ends up basically taking the cake. It'll be what progresses forward because we're starting to create windows that are still completely see-through but are also solar panels. So soon your house could be powered literally by these solar panels that are built into the window itself. We're creating, what are they called? I want to call it a ceiling tile, shingle. We're creating shingles that are not only more resistant than what they currently are and far more resistant than standard solar panels, but are actually tons of little solar panels. And the reason that's important is if you know anything about solar panels, you know that say you have one giant panel. Now, if that has a small crack in it, you might lose, even though it's a tiny little crack on that panel itself, you might lose 90% of its efficiency. Well, if you do a lot of little panels, you're less likely to lose that huge chunk of energy. You might drop off a watt here, a watt there, whatever from that. But them being more durable also helps with them not breaking. Uh, the question is, how durable are those? I'm wondering if you bring it to like the Midwest, where I am, where say a whole section of a tree because of heavy snowfall might actually collapse and fall. Now that tree section, when it hits the roof, is it capable of taking that sort of impact? Are those tree branches that fall going to damage all those panels, or is it going to land and basically have the energy absorbed by all those? Not physically absorbed, of course, but just basically how sometimes you'll get lucky and the tree limb lands on your roof and doesn't damage the roof. And that's because it equally dispersed all of its energy output when it drops. Uh, Other energy options we have looked into as a species as a whole is what was it? It was aquatic thermal. It's where we build something underwater that heats up the water enough that we can make a boiling point. But then we did scrap that because we realized that would kill a lot of sea life around that area and probably ultimately in the long run lead to long-term effects in the entirety of the ocean. So they did scrap that. Glad they learned something, but a lot of things people don't learn from when they trial and error stuff. Trying to think of the other ones that they've had. Oh yeah, static discharge, where they were figuring since the Earth is spinning, they could probably put something down that's highly electrified, like leather or certain fabrics and stuff that grab static real easy. And they figured they could put those up, collect static off the air, and then have that discharge into wires that go down into something, but it wasn't producing enough energy. But solar panels so far have been very effective. And I'd like to see your guys' thoughts in the chat. So anybody that is here, please feel free to chime in on the side. Tell me what your thoughts are on either green cars, green energy as a whole, where you think it's going. If you think it's just going to completely flop, hey, let your voice be heard. Because as you know, this channel is all about free expression. I want to hear your thoughts, whether it's right, wrong, indifferent, doesn't matter to me. I'm here to learn from you just as you might learn from me. So let's hear from the audience and let's get talking. It does show that there's still one person in here viewing, but it's not showing on the participants list. So you might not be a YouTube subscriber. If you're not a YouTube member, it's probably not going to allow you to chat. So that may actually be what is causing that if you're trying to chat. Basically, the live chat on this side is not a comment section, it's literally live feed right now with me. Things that people have to look at with solar panels that are a downside is there's a lot of ways that they can lose their potential of sucking in energy. Just wear and tear, normal degradation of time, which is why they are trying to improve what materials we can make to actually help last a lot longer. The panel itself, like I said earlier, very, very fragile. Even even small hits to it, if it cracks that actual panel's filament itself, it can completely make the entire panel worthless. Another thing is shade. A lot of people are like, yeah, well, you get wind even in the darkness. But in complete darkness, like the middle of the night, you don't get sunlight. Well, you get a very little amount, but yes, you don't get as much. One thing I've been personally curious of is, can we make a solar panel that, yeah, it collects solar radiation light, but can we make one that also would pull energy from certain light sources that we can make? Because if we can do that and make it use less energy to make the energy, then we actually can put into it. Say, like, you have a light right above it, and it's putting energy in. Even if it's a plus 0.01%, that's still a increase to the energy. Some of you might be like, oh, perpetual motion machine, not possible. I don't know. It may be possible in the future to make a machine that physically we're able to produce a little more energy than what we're even putting into it. The downside with the whole darkness thing is the fact that you still have to clean a solar panel, like one way or the other. It's not going to produce any energy for you if it's covered in snow, if it's covered in dirt, debris, tree limbs, if it's shaded in any way, whether that's heavy clouds or you have a tree that grew too close to your house and now it has its limbs up over it or whatever, or even near it, and the sun is casting a shadow from that. There's also just dirt and stuff that's in the air. When it builds up on there, it slowly downs how much energy those produce. So you have to basically get up and clean those all the time if they're on your house. So even though I'm saying, yes, I praise them because they're the best that we have when it comes to green energy, the best also comes with some sacrifice. You do have to clean them and maintain them very, very rigorously, where the wind related ones that we have so far are fairly low maintenance. If I remember right, they said they visit those things. The big ones, I think they said they do like a drive-by inspection once every month typically, and once every like 6 months they go in them and physically double check that their oil's still good, yada yada yada, all that. And there's various different things that they do to those, but overall the wind one takes less maintenance, but again is very inefficient for its space use. Solar panels, highly efficient, but take a lot of maintenancing. So you have a 50-50 when it comes to those ground. The city I live in, though, does have I think it's called a bipartisan agreement that they're using partial solar energy right now to cover, I think it's 5% of the total city's power grid utilization. and then they have some wind generation that is pulled in from a different section of a grid. that that wind is from a whole different area. They said once they got that up and running, they actually expanded their solar field. So I believe right now, I think 10% in the city is provided by solar power, and I want to say it's 5% is wind. Other than that, the rest of it is, like I mentioned very much earlier, coal production. Because we have a coal burning plant here. One of the most ineffective ways to produce power, but we have it set up to be as effective as we can personally make it here. Uh, Things that are far from green energy. Number one on the list, nuclear. That is about as far off from green as you can get. It's very deadly. It's no good on the environment. It produces a ton of wattage. It's highly unstable. If you don't keep it cold enough, possible meltdown. So, possible explosion risk at literally all times. Well, let's say a person falls asleep and that coolant starts draining. Well, guess what? By the time they wake up, it's because they're either in heaven or hell. Uh, because they're not going to be alive unless someone drags them out of that building. Uh, if you have that, and the reason I say if you drain the coolant, because we do have some that we had built at one point that were away from rivers. Uh, a lot of them nowadays we have where a river will run next to it and they suck in some of that water and then they divert the water that they use to cool those reactor rods off to the side to a different area. And so you end up with, excessively heated water. On why do we even have nuclear? Probably because for now we still use it because it's a giant source of energy. It's basically like saying, hey, I can screw in one light bulb and my whole house no longer needs any incoming power because it puts off a crap ton of energy for very little input, basically. But it requires such high maintenancing because everything is so tight tolerance wise that you have to be able to watch every little aspect of those plants. Green energy is supposed to be anything that doesn't uh, need a renewable resource. So we don't have to go mining up coal. We don't have to do oil production or any of that sort of stuff for sucking oil out of the ground and things like that, which is why I kind of find wind a little bit interesting because when you look at it really does need oil to operate. It's not technically a green option, but people view it as one of the best. Uh, I've seen some people praise it because why else would we make whole entire wind farms? Well, it's because they really are needed. If you put one up in a field, you're not going to produce all that much. Mm, That's like I said earlier, they just don't produce much energy. So you put, 30, 40, 50 of them in a field and congratulations, you're powering your Tesla for the week or whatever. But if you take the amount of solar panels that you could cover that same amount of ground with, yeah, now you can't farm on that ground because, you're actually physically taking up that entirety of the ground. But if you were to fill that same area with solar panels, you might power the entire city rather than a few people's cars at best. So, solar panels are my choice. Uh, I definitely think they will for sure be something in the future that we'll definitely see more and more advancements on. And eventually, I'm kind of hoping we see solar vehicles, like not just we charge our vehicle due to solar power, but a self propelling vehicle that actually runs off of a solar grid that's on top of it. So it doesn't need very much energy to run in general. It can power itself, uh, making it literally self reliant. So as long as it has some sort of energy source, it would no longer need any outside. Uh, but yeah, I am going to kill this one off. It's been 30 minutes. Looking at all my live streams will be 30 minutes to an hour. This one I figured I'd just touch base, throw a little bit of info out there about what I felt and what I thought. I was kind of hoping to see some people over in the comments. That's kind of what keeps these live streams going, is live stream comments, because then I can reply back to what those are. Hopefully the audio was perfectly fine for everybody, and if not, definitely put a comment below later and I will try and work on that. Thank you for your time. See you on the next one.